Well, howdy. Howdy, everyone. Welcome to the Gundam Explained show. It is March 9th, 2023. Good time to talk about Gundam like we do every Thursday. Steven, what's up?
How you doing, buddy? Yeah, I'm just hanging out, man. It's good. I love that you read off the date because it feels like a proof of life. Like we didn't record this last week and we're just putting it out.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because I changed from just calling this the podcast to the show, even though there is a podcast version that goes up. But it was for me listening to other podcasts while I work where, yeah, the date kind of helps because sometimes I'll just see a cool title, click on it. The date gives me context for the knowledge that the person might have when they're talking about something. So
that's a very good point. I never considered that.
Yeah, no, it's because of how like broad these topics are. Because there's so many cool things we could talk about, and we're about to. But real quick, just looking at chat, Ian Hansen, our mod, good to see you. I win. Yeah, he's the first to post in the chat. Neo X is second. I'm not going to count everyone, but he just said second. So good to see you. Ultronomous, good to see. Oh, he's third. Okay, you guys are really carrying this on. And then Enthusiast, Zombie Painter, Shirt Lad, Primus vs. Unicorn, Ken's Rage 2 OST. No, Ken's Rage 1, actually. But good call on that. Dan Vince, good to see you. Travis Wadlow, Rogue New Type, Goose is in the house. Yeah, so we'll get started. If you guys hadn't checked it out yet, Steven and I did his live stream yesterday. It was another cool gaming topic about narratives in games. Like it went from how the narratives sometimes guide the mechanics of the game, or sometimes the other way around. It was pretty neat. Games that the chat came up with, I thought was pretty cool. But links to all that stuff down in the description. I mean, really, if you just want to get another Gundam Explained show, you might as well be watching the Midnight Hatter live stream on Wednesdays.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It's like a week long of Gundam Explained. Between Monday with you, Tuesday on the supporter stream with me, Wednesday, and then today. So
no, that was pretty cool because on your supporter stream you whipped up, and I don't think you finished it, but you whipped up a diorama that was with the Zeta, the Hammurabi. Am I saying it right?
So this is our Zeta Gundam Hammurabi. I really just wanted to test out to see if my neon glow paints would work on cotton.
And that's is that it activated right now?
No, this is with it off, so this would be just natural lighting. I think
that actually looks pretty good for just standing there without it activated.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, you can see the professional shots on Instagram.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I need to do something like that because even on another stream of yours, you had the 3D model. It was the Hayaku Shiki riding on top of the Wave Rider, and your goal was to try to make a diorama out of that as well, with the smoke base or whatever, exhaust.
Yeah, that's the goal. I want to start doing that kind of stuff. So let me know if you guys have any suggestions. Ultronomous brought up the idea of doing something Psycho Gundam related, so I think that's going to be the next experiment.
Yeah, I saw that little one you had, and we were talking, I think, yesterday, and I think an idea, would be like the Hong Kong city scene or something like that.
Oh, definitely. I found some awesome little 3D printable buildings. I think we can smash to bits. It'll be fun.
Yeah, that's neat, because I really want to create a diorama out of some of my stuff. I mean, I have some of the stuff set up, like in canon, but to really flesh out a scene. I mean, I did that with my Star Wars action figures, but I haven't done that with Gundam much yet. Oh, except for not that this is customizing as much, but the white base hanger from Robot Spirits. Like I got that, added the little LEDs. That's pretty cool.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah. No, but for today, we're going to talk about Mecha live action movies in general. There's not too many. I think we might cover all filmography of live action Mecha movies. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Seed, because I've got further along into Seed. And I'm actually surprised how much I started enjoying it more. unless that's
like exposure therapy or something. Like,
okay, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's either that or actually that. Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those psychological things where I just over time I'm like, okay, I like you. But,
just keep eating the broccoli. I swear you'll think it's good later.
nah. But no. Yeah. To start off, and dang, I'm getting that that annoying flicker. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. But that annoying flicker. I swear, I'm not trying to give people seizures here, but like at least on my side, the Twitter or the screen share is flickering. But anyway, I'll move off of this shortly. So I asked on Twitter, what is your favorite live action mecha movie? So 146 people saw this tweet in only 3 responses because there's just not many mecha movies, live action movies. I think that's what it is.
I have to say that's one of my favorite features of new Twitter is like knowing how many impressions a tweet gets, and then you see the engagements, and it's like, oh, ow.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me that like 1,000 people saw my tweet and I got 2 likes?
And normally if I ask a question, especially like if it's super relevant, like Witch from Mercury, I'll get a lot of interaction.
Yeah.
Or the Seed versus Wing. But when you ask a live action mecha movie, I think that more implies like there's just not much live action mecha movies. And even the ones that were made were never really like amazing.
Are confused about like does X movie count as a mecha movie? Like would you count some of the old Godzilla movies as mecha movies or Ultraman, something like that?
That's a good point actually. Well, then let's look at this. Like you posted Robot Jocks easily, and I'll concur. So Goose got me and Ian and a few others to watch it, and then we did our G-Watch. So for supporters, you have access to the exclusive Gundam Explained podcasts, and the last one we covered Robot Jocks. So actually, before I have a seizure, I'm going to do this real quick. And so Robot Jocks, I thought was way better than I expected in any way. Like, and part of it, and we talk about this on that podcast, but like, part of it is, I don't know, like, part of me is accustomed to special effects from the 80s, and when they're able to be done well, it's like you could tell they're practical effects, but you like how it looks. Robot Jocks seems to take the best of practical effects at that time and be able to really show a mecha battle, and I think they did well.
And have you seen like some of the behind the scenes like footage and photography from that? Because I don't remember if it was Gunjap on Twitter that posted it, or if I saw it on like one of those like retro 80s Instagram accounts that I follow. But those models, the model kits that they used of the Robot Jocks, I mean, they were like the size of a toddler, like, and they were kind of holding them up with like fishing line, and oh man,
cool. I think I saw that recently too, and that I used that in our discussion. And Goose brought up that's one size of different variations they had depending on the scene. So cool. I agree with you with Robot Jocks. I haven't seen many live action mecha movies because I don't think there's many, but Robot Jocks was very surprising. And then there's sequels to it. So and I started one of them the other night. I didn't finish it, but I got to say, like, I think what they nailed down is tone. Like they're able to have decent enough acting within the tone of the material, and I think that works. Sometimes I feel like movies, like the tone is off, and so then that makes it harder to take the special effects seriously or even the premise. But I think
you can tell when an actor is like really going for it versus like they're phoning in the performance because they know it's kind of like a B movie. And credit where it's due. It's like that's where Sam Raimi has always like been great as a director, because he can get any actor to like buy in and say like, hey, come on. Like, I know that this is a silly comic book movie or something, but I need you to go in all in.
You know what? That's a good point, because Sam Raimi also tends to use extras more than you would typically see in a movie, because he gives extras lines all the time, like groups of people. Yeah. A Spider-Man, Army of Darkness, when Ash is going into the pit, Yeah, and then the Spider-Man, anytime there's stuff with Peter Parker, like he does a good job of getting performances out of extras. And sometimes these extras are friends of his that he like. I know in Spider-Man 2, there's a guy that I think it's Spider-Man 2, yeah, on the train. It's the guy from Evil Dead 2 that he had play a passenger. And it's cool that he does that, and I think that's what makes a good. That's the thing. A mecha movie almost has to be a B movie. So it's
Yeah.
and it depends. Like I think getting Guillermo del Toro to make Pacific Rim was probably a good idea, but it's weird. I don't think Pacific Rim became as popular as I think it could have been. Like it is though within the circle of people that like mecha, but outside of that, people don't really talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the things that Robot Jocks does really well that Pacific Rim kind of slouches on is you have a variety of mecha in Robot Jocks, and you get to see them in several different fights. You get to see lots of different pilots, lots of different action scenes. In Pacific Rim, you get introduced to this awesome lore, and it's like, oh man, you have the Soviet machine, and then you've got like the Chinese machine, and like so you have like all of this cool mecha, and then all of them go down in one fight, and you're like, well, why'd you even show me the cool three-armed mech if you're just gonna trash it? It's like I really it's a kind of a lazy filmmaking trope, I would say, where it's like you show someone you show the audience something like really badass, and then you cut it off at the knees just to make the bad guy seem more bad, like more deadly. And it's like you don't have to do that. You could let the cool thing be cool.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like what happened with Boba Fett in a way.
Yeah.
Like they were making the good guy seem cooler by taking out Boba Fett real quick, but they were introducing him as this badass character, and he didn't really do too much then.
Jetpacked.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna look at the chat real quick. Let's see, Tony Reyes, Robot Jocks. I was always renting that from Blockbuster. That's cool. Travis Wadlow, what's the one with Hugh Jackman and they're ripping off Rock'em Sock'em Robots and Autonomous?
It is Real Steel.
Yeah, Autonomous got Real Steel down, which I haven't seen that one either. That's a good one. I just thought of that. I remember hearing about, never saw it. I'd have to check that out.
I always mix up Real Steel and that other one, Chappie.
Or
is that the same?
Yeah.
Is that the same movie?
Chappie. No, those are different. Hugh Jackman plays a bad guy, doesn't he? In one of those movies made by that dude that has a robot, Hugh Jackman is a bad guy in it, and I think it is Chappie.
Yeah.
If that's the one, because it's like he's, I guess, the designer of it or something, the weapons guy or whatever, and then he becomes bad near the end. It might be Chappie. I forget. I mean, Chap probably knows. Barry BB is saying Crash and Burn. That's one I found, and I think it's another name for the sequel, but people didn't know it was a sequel to Robot Jocks or something like that.
Because that was what they always said to each other. It's like, oh, Crash and Burn, and then they'd like bump fists. And
stuff. Matt Wheaton, my favorite live-action mecha movies. You say, well, that's pretty easy sauce. Gunhead, Robot Jocks, Robot Wars, Pacific Rim, and RoboCop, I think.
I like his description later of Gunhead, where it's basically Terminator on Ultimate Warrior steroid stash.
Yeah, you know what? Gunhead I have never seen, but preparing for this show, I was watching clips and pictures, and I've always wanted to see it, and I've actually got it now. So that might be a movie night.
Watch party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's got to happen soon. RoboCop. So I guess with the Ed 1029? What, Ed 109? Ed 102? I forget the name of that mech, but I guess that would be the reference, which I guess that becomes a pivotal part of the story, so I think that would count. Let's see. Iron Man, no, but that's a funny one.
Yeah.
Chappie is from the guy who made District 9. Yeah, so that guy, I keep forgetting his name. He was going to make a new Alien. He was going to make Halo. Never. Yeah, Neil Blomkamp. Thank you. Yeah.
Godzilla has Mecha Godzilla, so that counts as a giant robot.
Oh, yeah.
True.
I would say that's a mecha film. Even though you could say that's a monster film, but you can say because of the mecha, it can also be. And you know what? Like, I liked the 2014 Godzilla. The other ones after that, you could tell they didn't put as much of like, let's make sure this resonates ground in a grounding way to the audience, like 2014's did.
Yeah.
But once you got to the Mecha Godzilla part, I thought that was a badass design. Like, I keep eyeing that SH Monster Arts action figure of it, but it's like super
I
expensive.
think it's hilarious that for all of the for all of the examples people are mentioning, not a single person has mentioned a Bayverse Transformers. It's like,
Oh,
we
well,
don't mess with Bayverse.
interesting. Is a Transformer a mecha?
It's a good question.
Is mecha something someone pilots?
Shirt lad, I'm with you. Short Circuit should count.
Oh, oh, don't bring that guy up. I
Please
remember
don't delete.
when I was watching that as a kid, that was too sad.
Yeah.
I cannot watch that.
But yeah, I mean, I'm with you though. Like, are we only counting piloted mecha, or are we counting just robots? Because obviously, robots would open up.
Yeah.
Wall-E would be a mecha movie at that point.
iRobot, stuff like that. So I would say,
Transformers, people can be inside of a Transformer.
I was gonna say. But you know what I would say, and I could be wrong because you guys taught me about Super Robot, because I was saying, is Gundam Super Robot? No, and then you guys kind of dished me, on what that means. I would also say Mecha is a piloted robot, and if you're not piloting it, then or if it's sentient, I don't think that counts. But I could be wrong. Maybe it could be sentient and you could pilot it. If there's a piloting component, it's mecha.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, I mean, like if you go into Gundam examples, like Gundam Sentinel, the Alice AI can control the Sentinel Gundam. Does that make it not a Gundam? Like, does it not need its pilot?
That's a good point. I think if the core point of it was to be piloted, that makes it a mecha. Real quick, thank you, Tony Rios, with the $9.99 super chat. I'd love to see a live-action Robotech movie. What are y'all's favorite UC mobile suit design? Well, to start with the mobile suit design, I'll just say I think variations on the Mark II, especially the things you see in Advance of Zeta. I know a lot of people hear me say that, but recently, because of playing through Missing Link, I have fallen in love with that Pale Rider line. So it's like Pale Rider stuff, Advance of Zeta stuff. What about you, Steven?
Stuff.
I'm going to say Zeta Gundam, but that might be low-hanging fruit.
It's always going to be a Zeta. For if we're talking about like Federation Gundam designs, it's got to be the Zeta Gundam. But yeah, I mean, I'm a Xeon guy. I love the Ifrit Noct is like my favorite Xeon design. It's just so cool and like dark and mysterious. It's like
Scary.
if the Crow had a mobile suit.
Yeah. I think that's one of those where if it like comes out of nowhere, it's like kind of scary in a way. Yeah, Tony, let us know what your favorite UC mobile suit design is. But also, Tony brought up the thing about the live action Robotech, and I got to say,
awesome.
Yeah, and so here's the other thing I need to learn, and maybe you can teach me right now. I'm about to be done with the first season of Macross, and then I know there's Robotech, but like, are they similar enough where the names are just interchangeable, or is it different enough?
So I never watched enough of Macross to really have an appreciation for it. I did watch Robotech as a kid. As I understand it, as the internet has told me, Macross was first, and Harmony Gold, the American company, decided to take some of the animation clips from Macross and some animation clips from two other animes and
mash them,
kind of Frankenstein them together into a terrible story, which is why you get some of the strange inconsistencies. But yeah, I mean, most of my Robotech lore knowledge comes from the PS2 game Battle Cry, which is a phenomenal video game if you have not given it a try.
You know what? I think I did play that. I want to say I got it on Xbox or something. Like I think they made it a big deal when it came out, and it was like cross-platform.
Because it was one of those, like, it was in that first generation of cell shaded games.
Yeah, that's right. It was cel shaded. I just remember the giant bad guys throwing me off. I'm like, but it's
Like
funny
what?
because in the show, when Ikaru, whatever his name is, first sees a giant, he's like, what? Like, I loved his reaction. It made sense to me. He's just like freaked out of what he saw. Like,
Yeah.
I liked how they went that angle because it's like I freaked out too. But I think that lends well to a movie because of the design. I love how their mecha designs are like based in like aircraft today, fighter aircraft and modern fighter aircraft that just have different modes to be
Yeah. Well, and it's
bipedal.
like even the story behind how they adapted the alien technology into
Yeah.
just it's like it makes sense. Like if uh you know what it reminds me of is the sequel to Independence Day, as terrible as that
Oh,
sequel is. But I love the
yeah.
way that their fighter planes, like they basically took F-22 Raptors and then slapped alien thrusters on them so that like, they could fly in space.
Good that you called out that movie because it wasn't good, but it like had the right ideas. And I
I
think
know.
that's like when I look at the original Macross, like if they make a movie of it, they could take the right ideas but kind of scrap like the things that just didn't work for me, like the guy going out into space holding his breath to go hunting for fish. That was weird.
It's a little weird.
And some of like the giants shrinking themselves to then go hang out with the humans. Like I like the concept that the aliens are so fascinated and they're like kind of have a calling to the human culture because of the singing, men and women together, the idea of love. I thought that was a neat way to go about it. But if they take those ideas, they'd probably have to change it for a live action to make it a little more grounded. But the ideas are there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it has all the components of being a successful, you know, um, take Top Gun Maverick and then just
yeah,
like add giants into it. Like,
yeah, no, exactly. And you know what? I don't know what your thought of that new Top Gun movie. I actually didn't see it until recently. I felt like it was a very um, poetic movie. It seemed like as it moved very quick through character interactions to build motivations, but their lines of dialogue were always very short, very poetic, and then they'd move on to the next thing. And I thought that was an interesting way to make a movie.
it felt like a series of vignettes
Yeah, yeah,
compared to like a, first act, second act, like just a straight story. And sometimes I think that that's really powerful. I
yeah.
think that there's a lot of TV shows that capture that sort of that sort of formula for creating stories. I would love to see something. Well, I guess technically you do see that in like Gundam Evolve, right? Like
Oh,
that's a
yeah,
Gundam version of like, it's episodic, but they're all kind of just like little vignettes, little peeks behind the curtain, so to speak. It's not like a full-fleshed story, and I think that that's the kind of stuff that makes for awesome, like, video game content or whatever the case may be. I think that that would be a fun Gundam series to see, just like a series of little short slice of life type things.
yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I do feel like storytelling can use that more. It's almost like storytelling it kind of goes into a direction collectively as people do things and they want to copy them. But I do like the setup, the idea of a movie, not necessarily a show because you can really dive into things in a show, but a movie where yeah, it's a series of very powerful vignettes where it's setting up the character interaction, even if it seems pretty quick to like forgive, be mad, at least it's like a quick pace because yeah, the
Yeah.
Top Gun movie went by pretty quick when I was watching it. And I love, and again, those shots of the aircraft are the perfect ways to go about creating the special effects for mecha flying around. Make
Yeah.
it where the camera, even if it's in a 3D program where they have a camera looking at the mecha, make the camera's restrictions limited to movements of a real camera. And I think that's going to help portray the realism.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I mean, I think it's no secret that I have my first child here, and we don't allow her to watch Coco Melon. Is that it? Coco
I've heard of
Melon.
that. I haven't seen it.
Specifically because that 3D animated show, the cameras in it, like they're moving cameras in a 3D space, but they're doing this kind of thing where it's like the subject is here, and then the camera just kind of does this weird orbital pan, and it's nauseating. Like I feel sick watching it.
Dang.
And maybe that's something that I'm just showing that I'm an old type, and I just I can't hang with these new types. But like like you said, I think that capturing realistic camera motion instead of leveraging the full range of motion that you can do with a digital camera, I guess, like
But I know
what
what you
would you
mean.
even call that, a proxy camera, like, because it's a camera in false space. So
Yeah. There must be a name for that, because I think that is. I remember around the time of the A-Team movie when they had the scene of the tank coming out of the plane.
yeah.
I think it was the tank, and then they had like the camera. That was the first time I really experienced, okay, this camera's fake. Like that makes it look like a cartoon instead of something real happening.
Exactly. And so it's like, you look at films that really broke special effects boundaries, things like The Matrix, where it's like, instead of doing a virtual camera that orbits around, they took, like 100 cameras and put them around their subject, and then like blended the footage together. And there's something to be said. I think that you can definitely tell the difference between something that's done on a virtual camera and something that's been done. There's a lot of post processing that goes on, but there's something organic there.
Yeah, and you know what? That also reminds me of other elements of digital filmmaking that I would want to be avoided in a live action Gundam or even Mecha movies in general. One is using the volume. So, like Andor just recently passed, great show, didn't use the volume, and then the new Mandalorian season, the first 2 episodes are out, and it is super dark. Like you could tell they have to have the lighting just right because there's light coming from behind the actors and what's being shot. And it reminds me of when I would be taking pictures of my Gunpla and my robot spirits, and I have my monitor here with the monitor is the light source. So I have to like figure out how can I light the figure without it dimming the background. And I think they just haven't perfected it yet. And so
Right.
I don't know. Have you watched the new Mandalorian yet?
I haven't seen any of the new Mandalorian, but
okay. Because if you do watch it,
using that volume, the volumetric like sound stage.
Yeah, the second episode,
some like Marvel movies too.
Yeah, even Marvel movies. Yeah, and it's so dark that it's like it looks when people complain about Alien vs Predator 2 being too dark. It's like, nah, this is Mandalorian. I can't see anything.
Yeah.
Speaking of filmmaking, I like Alien vs Predator 2 because of all the practical effects that they used. Even if it broke up to all these character talking things. I remember I was watching it with my son, and anytime like there would be character interactions, we would just fast forward into the next Predator fight scene because it was just like, And plus, it's funny, I would rather my son see the Alien and Predator fight than like some of the teenagers talk about things that are a little inappropriate for him. So I thought that was kind of funny. It was like that with, because he's into Five Nights at Freddy's, so they have like, I forget what it's called. It's a show with the it's a movie with the animatronic killer thing. So a lot of times I'll like fast forward through the inappropriate stuff so he can see the animatronics. Am I a bad father?
Man.
No. Okay, so very cool. Thanks everyone. There's so much in the chat I wish I could read. Like the conversation in there is awesome. But what I've made sure to do for now on is like whenever I do my live streams, I make it where the chat is still visible. So if people are watching this later and they want to see what's going on in chat, sometimes I'll go through it to get ideas, get some discussion. But
yeah.
So a couple things. One random thing, Amazon actually had a decent price for the aerial Gunpla.
Oh, shoot.
So I ordered it to come next day. Like most of the places you can buy it right now, I'd have to pay shipping and it would come out to the same price. And it's like I have the Robot Spirits version. So it's like, do I need the Gunpla? But one, I like to build and see if I can use my techniques to make it look cool. But it also has real type markings. and I love that stuff.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
I'll probably put a video together of that later. And
Yeah, I'm excited to see that.
Good. Yeah, because I'm going to compare the two. But speaking of videos, I did that tier list because it was Tony said that his favorite is the new Gundam and the Goof, which are cool. But the new Gundam, I rated it on the tier as a B. And you know what? A B is good.
Yeah, I think that the people get a little too hot when it's not an S, right?
Yeah.
Like anything less than an S is a loss. I'm like, I think a B is good. I think C's and below are bad, but
Yeah.
B is a slightly agree.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I could make everything S. I think it's obvious for the new Gundam to be S. So what I do is I break down elements of why it wouldn't be an S. But then, again, in that video, if you guys haven't watched it yet, like near the end, I'm like, I don't even agree with any of this anymore. Because it changes all the time,
Yeah. Well, yeah, it depends on what day of the week it is. Like,
Yeah, it depends the day of the week.
Sometimes, like, the asymmetry of mobile suits will throw me off, but then sometimes I love asymmetry. Like for instance, the Ground Gundam. I remember when the first time I watched 8th MS Team, I couldn't stand the Ground Gundam because I thought that the asymmetry kind of looked weird on the chest.
Yeah.
But then I turn around and I'm like building Xeon suits that have one spiked shoulder and one shield shoulder. So it's like there's a time and a place for everything, I think. And
yeah. No, that's a good point. And that's another thing. So when I do these tier lists, like I kind of explained in it, it's going to be a little bit of the power of the suit, context of the suit in the UC or any, because I'll do more than UC, but then also my personal thoughts.
Yeah.
And my plan is to have one tier video out a month. So if anyone has suggestions of what I need to be tiering, just let me know. But I've already got a list of 20 different videos I'm going to be making.
Well, that was I'm glad that you are using different criteria to base your judgments on for these tier lists, because like for instance, Shirtlad and I did a tier list ranking of all of the units in Gundam versus Zeta Gundam over on his channel. So if you see Shirtlad archive in the chat, go check out Shirtlad's videos.
Post the link.
All of the mobile suits in Gundam versus Zeta Gundam, and it was like, well, are we rating them on like how well they play in the game, or like how much we like them as mobile suits? Like,
yeah.
So I think we ended up kind of meeting halfway and saying like, well, how good are they in the game? Because some of them have different loadouts and stuff like that. Like the Hyzak custom, I would say that the Hyzak custom had better weapons than the flat Hyzak. So
yeah, that's a good point, because I even put the hobby Hyzak as an S. And I think its unique sort of place is what really made me want to give it an S. Same with the Rigazi. I gave the Rigazi S because I think that's a Zeta mass-produced suit Amuro is using to fight Char in the Sazabi, and he's kicking his ass. So it's like, there's so much there that makes that an S in my opinion.
Yeah, the Rigazi is awesome.
But anyway, yeah, so tons more. Again, I'm going to be doing one a month. I've already got 20 different topics for tier. If anyone's got something, send it my way, because I might find one more interesting. Bump it up. So, okay, next. Okay, I want to talk about Seed, because a lot of times I talk crap about Seed. I've talked crap about how the characters look, the story, but once I got to episode 27 or 28, this sounds like I'm talking about Double Zeta, but it picks up, and it's funny because Ian and I were even talking how he's watching Double Zeta right now, and he's like, yeah, the beginning, and then it gets better. It's like, wow, it's the same thing with Seed, but it's a little different because, like with Double Zeta, there's the legacy of MSG. No, that's metal. Yeah, MSG 0079, and then Zeta. And then into
about monosodium glutamate.
I thought I was about to say Metal Gear Solid, since you guys got me onto playing the fifth one. But I think like Double Zeta has this history where the beginning of it I am cool with, because I like to see Camille. I like to see what Bright's doing, even if they're in goofy situations. But with Seed, it's like I didn't really have any currency in any of these characters. So at the beginning, I'm like, well, what's really going on here? Now, what's interesting about, you know what, and this almost lends to what we were just talking about with the vignettes. Like, Seed has those, but they're like super long vignettes where they like make these characters have an interaction. And it's like, no one would really care because what are the stakes? We don't know these people. Right. I don't know why he's upset. Why does this make him upset? But what it's doing is it's building the character interaction. So once in Siege, you get to the point where it's like all points lead to the middle and the characters have to like make rash decisions. It's happening now. And what's even crazier is the beginning of Seed had so much bad animation. And I hate to say it because what it really is low budget filler. Like, we need to talk about the stuff. We won't spend as much money on it. And then when it comes to like the badass battles with the newer upgraded mobile suits, well done. Even weird close-up shots of the main characters where they're not drawn so like no nose and huge eyes. It's almost like
eyes this far apart and like
yeah. It's almost like they kind of toned it down later on. Although I am watching the HD remaster, I don't know how much of that changed. But I will say like because it's like by the time you get to that, you know, the 30th episode, I have a general understanding of the different factions, the different characters' motivations. So then when I see them playing out, I'm like, ooh, what's going to happen next? It's like, yeah, I really feel like it's why like
would you say that they had to spend those first 25 episodes planting the seeds?
Very good. That was
I'll
good.
see myself out. Thanks.
Well, it's funny because like these later episodes too keep talking about seeds. Like even the last one I just watched, one of the fathers of a character that dies is like, we're planting the seed. And then like when Kira's fighting, he like imagines a seed. And
oh my gosh, they said the thing.
Yeah, they said the thing. So I'm actually pretty happy like that it's now becoming enjoyable. But again, do you think it's that exposure that you were talking about where maybe part of it is probably? I have to then like the end result.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, anything, any show that you watch, I think you'll end up becoming attached to the characters in one way or another. Maybe it's because you hate them. You know, my wife has me watching things like Love is Blind and stuff, and it's like I look at some of these people and I'm like, oh, these guys are horrible people. But then, you know, by episode 8 or 9, I'm like, I can't believe she's marrying this idiot. Like,
yeah, yeah, that's literally what's happening in Seed. Yeah, like
yeah. So and that's how I feel with like with Seed and Double Zeta for that matter. You know, it's like
yeah,
and so it gives you an appreciation for the earlier, you know, kind of trash parts of the series, knowing that there is a payoff. When you're kind of in the midst of it, it's hard to see that there will be a payoff later on. Especially like you said, when you don't have any prior attachment to these characters. I think that you know, when you look at something like Double Zeta Gundam and you're like, hey, well, you know, a lot of these characters I'm familiar with, I know their story, you're okay seeing some of the like little vignettes and stuff. But then when you're just thrown into it and you don't know who these people are, you have no idea why you're supposed to care. Yeah, it's a little harder to get attached to it.
So that's what's interesting. So let's think about this real quick. The latest Gundam series that came out, so far, I think it's like the first half was 12 episodes, right? Like Witch from Mercury, and then there's going to be another 12. Do we know if there's going to be any more? Or so far, we only know there's going to be about 24 episodes?
As far as I know.
Okay. Because
what's 24.
What's interesting about that is like how many episodes are in these older shows.
Yes.
And like, you know, what's going on there? Are they just wanting to have constant exposure for people? But then with Witch for Mercury, why are they having it smaller? And even other recent Gundam shows have been smaller too, right? I don't know. What, like IBO, how many episodes is an IBO?
I want to say all of IBO was less than 40 episodes, like between season 1 and season 2.
Ah, okay. So and I wonder what's going on. Like, are we seeing where in this medium they're deciding to, maybe one, it's cheaper to produce less, but then are they maybe working with, are they consciously working with a higher caliber of writers in order to get through very important plot elements early on? You know, I don't
It's a
know.
good thought. I mean, I don't know necessarily the reasoning behind it. I feel like by doing that, by compressing the storytelling into a shorter period of time, you end up missing out on some of the more rewarding interactions that you might get. Like, if you go back to the 0079 series, would Amuro's relationship with Lieutenant Matilda, what would that be as prominent? Would you see the impact on that on him as much if it were, compressed down to like, yeah, you get an 11-minute sequence.
That's actually a very good point, because in the movie, it almost seems jarring how he is when she dies, the carrier.
Exactly.
Whereas in the show, even though he's still, a little freaked out by it more than I thought, they build up to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that example is a really good example of that.
Yeah, and you see that in a Gundam Unicorn. Like, there's so many characters that are basically just pathos for Benager, like Gilboa. That's like, hey, my name's Gilboa. I have a family. My kids live on Earth, and now I'm gonna go die.
Yeah. No, that's a good point too. Yeah, so at the end of the day, like I do, while I still have my problems with Seed, I will say that as a Gundam fan, it does get into the Gundamness, makes me excited. I will say one of my favorite parts was, because Kira as a character had been boring the whole time, but like, it's interesting when he's mad at Athrun and they have their first fight. It was the first time I think they animated Kira being so aggressively mad, where it made him interesting. And because his facial expressions were him being aggressively mad, he didn't have that look that you normally see with the characters. And that got me into it. And then not only that, but later on, how sides change. Athrun like comes out of nowhere to help Kira. Even there's a time where Kira like comes out of nowhere to help the team. Like all those mecha battle stuff, they do really well. I saw Goose saying something that the HD remaster is bad. They just zoomed in to change them to widescreen, and that makes so much sense. There are these random scenes sometime where it looks like the line art
cropped.
Not only is it cropped, but even the line art looks like, okay, it looks like they zoomed in, but why would they? And it's because they cropped for widescreen.
See, I don't know. I never watched the HD remaster, so I had no idea that was.
And I wonder if anyone knows if there's like different, because some shows have different dubs. Does Seed have a different dub? I'm curious, because I actually do enjoy the dub going on right now, but and you know what? There's a character that is cool. And again, I'm sorry if I don't get the names right. There's a guy in Seed that's a commander, and he's like in I think at first he's in a ship, but then later he gets the strike, and then there's the captain of the main ship, the Archangel. And they're very cool characters on their own. And then, unless I missed something, just randomly in a recent episode, they embraced each other. And it was almost like seeing those two characters and not even thinking of it, them coming together, I thought was a very impactful moment. Well, that was well done, because they weren't leading you on about it, as far as I knew. And, there's him wanting to come back to help. And you think, oh, that's the type of guy he is, to come back to help. But when he was talking to her about it, he said it was because of her. Very well done in the midst, and there are the characters that are actually drawn a little better too. But in the midst of things, being weird, C does have those gems. Mula Flaga. Okay, thank you. I knew that was, and people seem to like him, so that's. Oh, and the lady captain is Murue Ramius. Okay, thank you guys.
And Mula Flaga has probably one of the better arcs of all of the characters in Seed and Seed Destiny. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because so far, I've been enjoying his character throughout.
Yeah, I think everything about Seed is great except for Kira.
Yeah, and because he's the main character and you have to follow him, that's what I think makes it kind of like stale for a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad to come around on that. Okay. Next up, I think this would be a very interesting discussion. I hope I again don't get people any seizures, because it is still flashing a little bit. But for GBO2, they just announced the GM Kai ground type. So there was a lot to unpack here where I was like, okay, GM Kai, ground type. I mean, it has the Corvette booster, and it's a GM Kai. And so I was doing some research, and one, it says TB because it's Thunderbolt. You know, that's one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
But two, when I was, okay, so I pulled up the RGM-79C GM Type C. It's also known as the Kai. So
Right.
this is something I didn't know, and I don't know if they maybe call any one-year war GM that has more to it just a Kai. You know what I mean?
It feels that way sometimes.
And because this is like Thunderbolt. So some people say, you know, Thunderbolt is not canon, but from even everything I've read online, the intention is Thunderbolt animation is part of the animated universe. Just little things might be different. And the artist said he was able, or the writer or the artist, I forget which one, said that he was told he could do that. But then I was also reading in Japan, and I might have said this in one of my videos. Hold on, oh my God, I'm going to have a seizure. In Japan, they don't treat canon like the West does. Things can be loose, and that's part of the fun. That's why we have all those AUs.
And that's, so first, I think that Kai, and Chad, I'm sure will correct me, but I'm pretty sure that like the kanji for Kai just means custom. So anything, you know, Zaku Kai, GM Kai, I think is just a custom unit.
Okay.
I think. At least that's what I've been told by my my lore advisors. But like you said, with regard to lore in Japan, I think that that's why you have the Legend of Zelda franchise the way that it is. Like,
yeah,
you know, they have like a loose timeline of events, like how all of the different Legends of Zelda relate to each other. But you know, they also have like weird splintered timelines where it's like,
the
in this
hero
version,
timeline
Link dies. So
yeah, you know what, that is interesting because the more, even Final Fantasies, like the more you look at popular IP in Japan, you see that they don't adhere to like canon. It has to be this, but there's a loose like this they're connected. This happened here, but that doesn't really affect the overall. And I like that approach. I really do because only Siths deal in absolutes. I think that's what I was trying to say. And so like if you think about it, kind of being a little more open and loose with storytelling is pretty fun, actually. Okay, Rogue New Type. I'm glad he's saying something. Yeah, the Type C is the Kai version. The RX-78-2 Kai has the same proportions and armor design as the Type C GM. Okay, so Type C is that's right, because isn't there that, oh no, I'm thinking of the Zaku RX-78-2 that's in Thunderbolt. But no, and so it is kind of interesting because at first I was like, GM Kai with the Corvette booster, what is this? Oh, it is even introduced in MSX. Actually, let me, even though it's flashing, sorry everybody. It was first introduced in Mobile Suit X, and then
and
Thunderbolt.
Is that the same booster that's like on the back of like the GM Interceptor?
Yeah, it's supposed to be the same. Similar. Yeah, because I was reading in one of the, because what I did was I did a search for Kai on the Type C wiki and came up with, where they refer to it as Kai, which is very interesting. What was the other one?
Which is kind of funny if you consider that like that's the GM Kai and then there's a GM custom that's not the Kai, but
yeah, I know that stuff is very interesting, and I'm sure, like, it's funny because then when I come to look things up on the Gundam wiki, not that it's always right because it can be wrong, but Kai on this it does say also known as Kai, and not that it's saying like actually nothing in here really says anything about Thunderbolt, does it? Let me see. Because
now I find that like you know, the wiki is kind of sparse when it comes to information about Thunderbolt stuff, in particular from the second half, like anything from like Bandit Flower.
I think so. I think because it's the animation version, and I think usually it takes time before, like, especially when it comes to like over time interviews happening where people collect more information or books that come out with additional information, and then they're able to kind of put it together, throw it up there. But yeah, you know what? I love the look of the one on Thunderbolt because, and I think Thunderbolt does this a lot, it's because they have that Federation emblem right on the forehead. I feel like, cool. Yeah, that just adds to the idea of these things being manufactured and proud weapons. Like, it's almost creepy, but it's still cool.
Yeah, it's like a hood ornament, you know? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that. I would actually, and I bet they have one out there, to build a Thunderbolt version of the Kai, because I like the green that it has on it. And yeah, so, and that's another thing, like, when you see these Thunderbolt suits show up in Battle Operation 2, I think that's just another confirmation that these are treated as part of the canon of UC. And so, yeah, I was watching some gameplay of it, and it's just neat to think having, you know, that Corvette booster flying around, and it's a raid type unit, so it's supposed to go in for quick close quarter combat, but it has a bombing run, so you can swoop in, bomb, and then fly off. I think that's pretty cool.
That is pretty sweet. I'm glad that they're using this opportunity to introduce more sort of gameplay mechanics to GBO2, so that it, so it doesn't feel as stale. Like, you know, there's only so many different variations of, like, I've got a beam cannon versus, you know, he's got a machine gun, and we're just gonna kind of third person shoot at each other. I like the idea of introducing units that can do different things, you know.
Yeah. The Jesta, for instance, is the only one that can actually actively use its shield to block. And you press on the PlayStation, it's that touchpad button. But yeah, it brings up which even characters with shields can't do that. But the idea is position yourself so the shield takes the brunt of the. But I like that idea that you can manipulate the shield, and it makes more sense because with the Jesta, I think it's built into the backpack, the shield, and I think it comes out in front. So pretty cool there. Yeah, I've been playing back, to playing GBO2, because I really can't wait for this PC release, to be honest. Like, I feel like just one, it looked so good on PC, but just I think it'll be quicker to get into matches, because I think I even timed it yesterday. It took me 30 minutes to play one game, and I want to do my dailies, but sometimes it's like I can't fit it in.
Yeah, couldn't do it. No. I would put my daughter down for a nap, and then I set up my little monitor. I'm like, all right, let's play some GBO2. And then she's awake. I got
Oh man, that's got to be the toughest.
No.
But anyway, you know what? I think that's it for today's episode. Any other Gundam information that's neat that I didn't bring up? I don't think there's really been new stuff going on.
It's been kind of a slow week.
Yeah. But no, that's cool. No, thanks to everyone that joined today. The chat was badass. Like, I love seeing all this chat here. I gotta pick from this later for some cool lore stuff to talk about. And this will be released as a podcast on Friday morning. So that's that. Yeah, Steven's links are in the chat. I mean, honestly, if you're watching the show, you should also be watching Steven's. It's like a continuation. Part 1 on Wednesday, part 2 on Thursday. I think.
It's because we end up talking about pretty much the same thing, both.
But different angles
have
of
our
it.
own topics, and then we tie them together somehow.
Yeah.
What we need to do is we need to get someone to have a stream on Friday for us to all.
Yeah, that's right. There we go. Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks everyone. For supporters, we're going to be watching Gunhead. No, we're watching Gunbuster. Gunhead will be next.
Yes.
And I am getting so many
We're that excited about watching Gunhead.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. Yeah, Gunbuster, Gunhead, Gundam. What is with that? I don't know. But yeah, I'll post the dates for that soon for supporters. But anyway, I think that's it, everyone. Have a good rest of the weekend, Steven. I will talk to you later, and yeah,
Hey,
see you all.
buddy.